maybe I just can't show. Okay, can you see the slides changing? Yes? Sure. Sure. So my name is Katarzyna Abramczuk, and I work at the University of Warsaw, where I'm an assistant professor. I used to work in ABC years ago, really. My fields of interest include game theory and so-called digital sociology. So first of all, I wanted to say that I'm very happy to be here and have this opportunity to present one of our projects. It really stirs up some emotions in me because ABC was a very special place to me. What I wanted to talk about today is a project that we run at the University of Warsaw that is called Action for Computational Thinking in Social Sciences. This is a project that we are running together with University of Groningen and Alexander von Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society. And it is an educational project that is co-funded by Erasmus Plus program for higher education. And the project is about computational thinking. So I think I just start by explaining what we mean by that. Recently, there are many computational thinking style informations popping out in the media. So people start to learn about existence of such a thing because of the epidemic. So we've got lots of models that try to model how the epidemic spreads. But actually, computational thinking is something that people have thought about for quite a while now, and there is a definition for it. And the definition says that computational thinking skills rest on 4 pillars. The first one is decomposition, so the ability to break down data and processes or problems into smaller, manageable parts. So if you want to analyze some phenomenon, you just don't just look at it at large. You pick up some elements and try to look at them. So, for example, if you're interested in fashion, you can skip the strategies of the companies that produce clothes or sell clothes. You can concentrate on what customers do. Or when you want to analyze the dynamics of a party, you just can concentrate on the individual decisions of when to come to the party, when to leave, and so on. The second skill is pattern recognition. So, for example, when you have a class and in a big lecture room, you might have probably noticed that people who sit at the back of the room behave differently from the people who sit in front seats. It's similar on the school bus. People who sit at the back row typically behave differently. So this is a pattern that we observe across different conditions. The third pillar for computational thinking is abstractions, an ability to identify the general principles that generate the patterns that we observe. So we can, for example, say that the problem of cleaning a common kitchen in a student's apartment or paying for a shared meal have a similar structure underneath, and we can model it. And the last skill that is included in computational thinking is algorithm design. So it's just a way of telling a story what is happening, a step-by-step instructions that can help you describe the problem and help you solve similar problems in the future. The computational thinking in social sciences has many benefits. Some of them are listed on this slide. So first of all, they allow us to address challenges that are inherently interdisciplinary, such as ecological crisis, for example, or changing habits related to food consumption or energy consumption and so on. And this is because if different researchers have different models, they can be easily combined as long as they have similar assumptions underlying them. The second benefit is that it allows us to study dynamics of behaviors on various levels. So we don't get just a picture of what is happening, but we can actually follow the process and the mechanics. The third one is that when we slice up our problem into these manageable parts, these parts constitute natural candidates for formulating evaluation criteria if you want to change something within the process and introduce some changes. And the fourth natural benefit is that it allows for efficient communication, for example, between the analysts and the social scientists. So there are many benefits to this computational thinking in social sciences, but what we have found throughout our years of experience is that it is not that often taught within curricula in social sciences. So for example, for sociologists, psychologists, people who learn education, political science, this type of thinking is not that commonly introduced at the bachelor level. And there are several reasons for why this is the case. We have identified two fronts on which you can look at this problem. First, there are the students. Many students who study social sciences suffer from self-stereotyping and so-called mathematics and statistics anxiety that have already been mentioned here. So they are just taught from the very beginning that they are not good at STEM. This particularly refers to girls who are conditioned from an early childhood to doubt that they can do math. So they just enter the universities thinking this is not something I can do. And then typical curriculum in social studies includes a course on statistics, and these courses are very often a source of bad experiences. So, okay, so you want me to do some computation. This includes numbers. I've had numbers already in the statistics course. I didn't get a thing. I don't know what this is about. So it's better if I don't try to study this any further. And particularly related to this, partially related to this problem is that they lack motivation to study this kind of models anyway, because they think it's of no use to them. They just cannot see how the numbers, the models translate into something practical that they are actually interested in. On the other hand, we've got the academic teachers who also face some challenges in this respect. So first of all, we've got two almost separate worlds of researchers in social sciences. We've got those that use qualitative methods and those who use quantitative methods, and they have lots of problems communicating. And then if you do think quantitative methods in social sciences, you often think statistics. But statistics is just a tool. It's not really that close to computational thinking because it focuses on a picture, while the computational thinking focuses more on the process, on the dynamics. And then if you want to teach the students about processes and about computational thinking in social sciences, you might often find that you lack adequate examples, adequate level of materials to do this. Don't get me wrong, there are lots of materials to teach computational thinking, like books on game theories, there are like piles of them. But when you open them, you typically find that they start with the model, to say like, okay, this is the game, these are the players, these are the payoffs. And it's really not something that this student that we saw on the previous slide can relate to. So it's very difficult to introduce this type of models using these resources. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to change this state, and we wanted to introduce our students to computational thinking. And we were doing this for many years now. We've run lots of courses, and the model we go for at the moment is that we first want to offer them something we call peak over the fence. So we don't really want to start by teaching the students, oh, this is game theory, this is social network model, this is like decision tree. We first want to show them that this type of computational thinking in social sciences can be interesting for them and can be something they can actually do. So this is what we call peek over the fence. Just look, this is interesting, and this is something you can do. And this is how our action for computational thinking in social sciences came about. In this program, we have two goals. First, we want to provide the students with high level of mathematics and statistics anxiety with an opportunity to look to the world of computational social sciences. And we hope that they can gain two things out of this, get two things. One, they will master some new skills, but more importantly, they will gain more confidence so that they can pursue this type of education later on. And second, our second target audience are academic teachers that want to teach computational thinking at a low bachelor level to the students with this type of problems. So we want to provide them with some high quality educational resources for the beginners. The way we want to do this is by developing a massive open online course program that will be published on the FutureLearn platform. And this program will consist of 5 short modules or courses, each of which will be from 2 to 4 or 5 weeks long. And these courses will introduce key concepts and methods of computational social sciences. This approach has several benefits. First of all, this program will be free, open, so we will be able to reach broad audience using it. Second, we'll use diverse materials in this program. So this will be videos, articles, quizzes, etc. Depending on what we want to do the students to do at the current time, like acquire some new knowledge or practice something, switch between different types of tasks. Third, this type of materials can be incorporated into more traditional formats. So these materials will be available on our website, not only within the FutureLearn platform, and that they can be downloaded by other academic teachers that teach this type of thinking. And the program also allows for some flexibility, and there are several dimensions to this flexibility. One is that when you learn online, you can choose when you want to learn, what you want to learn. But also we have introduced some flexibility within our program itself. So we designed it so that it has 5 courses. And one of them is an introductory module on the basic concepts that just signals what are the possible paths to follow from here. And 4 are independent thematic modules. First one is, are we doomed to destroy our planet? So this is a module that is devoted to game theory and socio-ecological models. The second one is choices and decisions everywhere. And this is about realistic modeling of an actor, of an individual. The third one is how we spread disease, and this is about networks theory. And the fourth one is divided in similarity, and this is about different ways of modeling space. We have very specific assumptions about how we want to organize these modules. For our teaching, in our teaching experience so far, we have learned that this is a very bad idea to start with this. So we don't want to start with tables, numbers, graphs, and stuff like that, because it just really scares our students off. What we want to do instead, we want to engage them first. So this is, in these photos, you can see one of our educational games. It's actually live shelling several automata when we give the students marks, colorful marks, and then we ask them to stand in the grid and move around as the shelling model says they should. And this really, this experience is really a good kickstart point for the students to start thinking about computational models, because they engage emotionally and they really start to try to figure out how this happened, and they see firsthand that the micro decisions they make don't really translate exactly as they would expect into the macro result. So we want to achieve something similar in our mock program. Second thing that we pay special attention to is something that it can be metaphorically shown in this picture. Maybe some of you know what this is. This metaphor actually came from an educational conference we participated in. It's a Velcro. So the idea of Velcro in education is that when you want to introduce some new concept, you have to start with something that is already familiar, because this way you can build up. So this is another thing that we want to achieve. So first, we want to always start with the problem, not with the tool. So we don't start with introducing game theory, or we start by introducing the problem, for example, of air pollution, right? Or we start by saying, okay, you use plastic bags. Have you ever thought about plastic pollution? Something that is a problem that is known to the students and can be interesting to them. Second, we've learned that we need to scale down at the beginning so that we can use the experience the students already have. This is an example of how we introduce game theory, or more precisely public goods. And we do this by talking about kitchen in a student's apartment. So this is actually set where we made a video on this in Berlin. And the third technique we're using is providing hands-on experience and agency. So we want to give the students lots of models they can play with, so they can see what is happening if they change parameters in a model, for example. Our module has a similar structure. We start with a real-life example that is important to the students. Then we scale down to some simpler example they can relate to. So this is something they understand pretty well. And then we introduce some simple models for this simple, small situation, and then enrich them with details up to the point where they become advanced. And we don't really go much into the details of the advanced models, because we only want to offer them a peek over the fence. So we want to show them like the general skyline. So this is where you can get. This is what you can understand if you pursue this educational path even further. Just to give you an example, our first module is on game theory and socio-ecological models. So we start by presenting the problem of pollution. Then we scale this down to the problem of cleaning a student's apartment kitchen. Then we provide them with some simple models for the kitchen problem, starting with some simple game theoretic models. And then we show them some simulations in which they can actually play with some parameters and see what is happening, and how this can translate into the bigger problem that we have started with. At the moment, we are in the middle of preparing 3 modules. Actually, one is almost finished, and the launch is planned for the March 2021. Parallelly to these 3 modules, parallel to this launch, we will be starting our work on the 2 remaining modules, and they will be launched in November 2021. I hope that you got interested into this project, and I hope you will have a chance to look at the result of our work. This is where you can find us. This actis.edu is our website. You can also write to me. There is a recent paper that describes the project a bit if you're interested in it. I really hope that some of you will use it in their classes. I'm also kind of hoping that some of you will agree to be experts in our project, especially in the module on individual decisions, because I know there are people here who really know the stuff, and it will be interesting for the students at Future Lab. Thank you.
And computational thinking is very much in the discourse. People are talking about a lot, and the computational people are thinking about it. You know, the education folks are thinking a lot about this, and some of us would probably have liked a lot the fact that you go from problems to tools and not the other way. So you start with real problems, and there is a, you know, even here representatives of this Erlebnisarithmetik, or living through the processes of experiencing, you know, problems and then finding tools. So I am very, very enthusiastic about your work, And I hope that there will be questions from the education community. Thank you so much. Yes, Jan.
Yeah, we assume she can see us, but that's not the case.
Yeah, he's here.
It's crazy. It's very isometric.
He's here.
Hi, this is Jan. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Actually, I studied in Groningen many years ago, but that's an aside to my question, or more a comment. So, are you aware of Gerd Gigerenzer's article From Tools to Theories?
Yes, of course.
Your presentation made me thinking a little bit along that line. So can you so you read it? So in what way did that paper influence you, or does it play a role in your research?
In this particular case.
Yes. Well, I'll give you a hint what I was thinking of. So if you're smart, you're sometimes able to see what makes a certain problem computationally solvable. So you may not exactly know why a certain solution works, but you see it does work. And so you apply it and you find that the results are good, and so you stick to it without having actually grasped what's going on. But given that the results are so good, and this is not negatively meant, so and then you may apply this notion to many other problems. So that's the background of my question. There could be a certain bias, for example, in the way you do the computation. So in other words, if you look at, say, students who study right now versus a student who studied 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, they may actually see the world differently, solve problems differently, depending on when they studied.
Yes, of course, this is the case. But I still don't think it really influences what we're doing, because are you saying that students for example, now think less or more computationally than before? I'm not sure.
No, what I was not necessarily. I'm just thinking that depending on, say, when you grew up and when studying, whether I grew up. I was a student when computers were already a part of the education for 10, 15, 20 years, and in your case, it's there already for 50 years. And you can see in the programming languages, for example, the kind of techniques are used, that while a lot of remains similar, there are also some changes. So it could very well be that there is something else interesting to your research, namely that may also be a historical component to the kind of computations and the kind of computational thinking that people are, how should I say, tend to use.
Yeah, I get this, but what we want to do with this project, we really want to encourage the students to apply computational thinking, whatever it means to them. So we want them to be able to apply these 4 pillars that I've talked about in the beginning. And we are open to the new ways they see the world, the new ways to think about this computation, as long as it's kind of within this framework. We always learn from the students new things. But the students we are dealing with are typically people who are really scared of computational thinking in any form. So we are like a step earlier from what you're talking about, I think.
Further?
I said earlier. Yeah, so this is a step 0, I'd say.
Yes. So maybe then my point is that it would also be very interesting that as part of your work to also take this step forwards.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, but I think it's the next step precisely. So only after they can go through the first step and they can actually get convinced to thinking in this way, then we can see whether there are any differences between how they think, how people area thought, and so on.
Gigerenzer was thinking about theoretical theoretical thinking, deriving from tool use, but you could also think about how we solve societal problems, given that we have certain ways of thinking computationally about how to solve issues.
Yeah, this is very interesting.
Okay, thank you so much.
Shabnam.
Well, Catherine, I really liked what you are doing on many levels. Of course, probably those of us here in this meeting don't fit the picture of Girls Are Afraid, but loved the way you talked about giving the opportunity of peeking and then trying your toes. However, I have this question for everyone who's an educator. I know it's really fashionable, for the lack of a better term, to say problems before tools. However, if you have no tools inside, how are you even thinking about that problem? Well, yeah, of course you can have some abstract thinking, but I'm always thinking that a mix of both, instead of going from all tools and abstracts to let's make it all empirical French method, would be to give a peek into both at the same time. And this definitely works very well when you are focusing on not necessarily solving by the rules, but actually working on algorithms, which is computational solution finding. So that's maybe more of a comment or a viewpoint, but also my puzzle in taking the focus from one extreme and putting it on the other, and wondering whether a mix in middle would prove more efficient and effective educationally. What's your view?
Well, yeah, I think there is a point to it. So it's when we start with the problem, we do it mainly because we want to convince the students that this is something that can actually be within their interest area, because they don't come to study sociology or psychology to study numbers, right? They have some problems in their heads that they want to discover, learn something about. So we want to grab their attention, and we use these problems to grab their attention and to get them involved and see, okay, this is actually interesting. It tells me something interesting about the world we live in. And then when we do introduce the models, we first do it very informally. So we hide the maths, but the mechanics is still there. And we just try to convince them to start think about the problem. And when they start thinking about the problem, what typically happens is that they themselves find some elements of the models that we can just take from the students and tell them, look, we just used what you said, and this is how we describe this. This is how they learn about the models, and then it's way easier for them because this is something that came partially from them themselves.
Definitely more engaging.
Yeah, yes, it's more engaging, and they're also more motivated because they can see that it leads somewhere, some point that is interesting.
However, it doesn't take away the absolute role of educator, who would eventually link all of those thoughts from the students to the specific tool that she had in mind from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's again me, Kasia. Thanks for this wonderful presentation. I'm very excited about this. And I already looked at the website, and I think I will follow your modules. So what I now want to say here, comment, but also ask, is you mentioned Schelling in your presentation. Now, for those of you who do not know who that was, Thomas Schelling was a Nobel laureate, and he did exactly this stuff, computational modeling, sociology, neighborhood segregation, and in fact, Kasia, Nathan Burke, and we had some projects here, some work on the face recognition that was published in Peter Todd's book, Ecological, Todd Gigerenzer, Ecological Rationality, and also some journal article. And maybe you understand what this work was about if you just consider a title of Thomas Schelling, one of Thomas Schelling's publications, the book Micromotives and Macrobehavior. So micromotives we could translate with, or use instead the term heuristics. So we have heuristics on the individual level, and then we have macro behavior. This is what do we produce as an outcome as a collective. And you mentioned plastic bags. And here we have, for instance, maybe this idea, whether I now take the plastic bag when I go shopping or whether I get my own bag there, that doesn't make a difference. I mean, it's just a little plastic bag. But then if 8 billion people think like this, and this is, or 7, the number of people we have on this planet, then this makes a huge difference, of course. And we have 200 million tons plastic produced per year, and 20 million of these 200 million tons end up in the ocean per year. So here we have an example where the individual thinks it doesn't make a difference, but on the macro level we produce disaster, and this is exactly what you mentioned. And now I come to my question. So you have this tool, computational modeling applied to sociological problems. And here we have exactly this mismatch between micromotives and macrobehavior. And one thing is you can play around with these tools. You can teach people to play, to get fascinated about this, and it's fun. No? It's fun, it's interesting. But then there is also, on the other hand, this simple observation that there may be this mismatch between individual intentions and what we produce on the collective level. And this is, I think, something you can get across even without you look into the details of your tools. And you can understand this on a, let's say, more abstract level, even if you cannot compute anything at all, and if you cannot program and so on. And I think here, this is now my question, also to all educators, also here in this room. Do you think we can change behavior by giving feedback, behavior of individuals on the micro level, by giving feedback on the macro level? I think, you're also in game theory. This is, to some extent, a common good dilemma, right? You as an individual have interests that are misaligned with what we observe on another level.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't really believe it will work. And it is not our goal to change the attitudes of the students who learn about this. Even if it is a byproduct. What we want to do instead, we want to give them tools, so the models, that will allow them to play a bit with this phenomena, to look for solutions. So this is what we encourage our students to do. So try to think of what would need to happen for this situation to develop differently. And then if you have a way, you can also model this solution you proposed, and you can see where it leads to if you have a model, right? So we can play with this artificial society and try to think of possible solutions.
And ultimately, the hope is that by giving feedback on the macro level, you will change behavior on the micro level.
Ultimately, I think the hope is that you can play with the models and think of new innovative ways of solving the problems, and then you can apply them in real life and hope that they will work as they did in the models.
Yeah, but this is exactly my question. What does work mean?
The solutions don't have to be like, the solutions can be social in nature. So this can be institutions that are designed just to change the motivational structure of the problem.
There's an interesting link to what we discussed before the break, after my social scoring contribution. Do we trust in individuals that they may change their behavior due to insight? And here I'm now, of course, looking at Gerd, this risk savvy and this boosting and appealing to people's capabilities to understand and to change behavior. Can we trust individuals? which is also in line with the program of the Enlightenment? Or do we need governments who take over here and basically say individuals we cannot or shouldn't put too much trust on them? We should regulate and ensure that individuals behave in this way or the other, eventually with a carrot and stick approach. So do not educate them, but regulate them. I think there's an interesting thing here between this one, what you are doing, and this earlier discussion we had. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see what you said.
Mm-hmm. So, anyone
I
else
also think
on Zoom?
it can be both.
The way to the yeah. Thank you, Kasia.
Okay. Hello, Katarzyna. Thank you very much for your presentation. It seems that you have a very important and good project. I'm Joachim Engel, and recently I coordinated a project that has a lot of in common with your project. Not only that it also was supported by Erasmus, but our aim was to provide to develop a concept and a lot of teaching materials to help people understanding data about society. And in my talk on Sunday, I will talk a little bit about that also. And we had to deal with a lot of things that sounded similar to what you are talking about. Yeah? How to create good learning environments and what kind of challenges are implied in understanding these complicated data. The question I have for you, you have been emphasizing computational thinking, yeah? And you are addressing social scientists. Yeah? I mean, computational thinking, yeah, to me is something, it sounds rather technical, and the important thing is to learn about modeling and dealing with uncertainty. Yeah? So I just wondered a bit why that strong emphasis on computation and not on statistical thinking or modeling uncertainty. Yeah? And be a different phrasing, and you say certainly we focus on that. Yeah? You just use different words. I don't know.
I think we just use different words. Computational thinking is just a term from literature, but what we're really doing is modeling different types of processes at the individual level, group level, macro level. So these are models. We're building models, but to build models, you really have to think about reality in a specific way, and this is what computational thinking stands for. So it doesn't, in the beginning, does not involve really numbers or any maths. It just requires you to look analytically at the problem you're solving.
The project is still in progress, as I assume, but I'd be very curious to hear more about it as it goes on. There is an NSF project in the United States that addresses social science teachers, and with a similar emphasis maybe as yours. And I'm on the advisory board, and I could also connect you with them if that's of interest for you. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Good.